Oh my lord. So today's video is a continuation of the Gauntlet run. I shared video 1 or game 1 from my run yesterday. I talked about the lineup a bit, so we're going to continue that. This is game 2. So as a reminder, if you didn't check out yesterday's video 1, go do that. I guess now is also where I'm supposed to remind you to subscribe if you're not already. But our lineup is Fiora, Shen, Twisted Fate Fizz, and then my mid Targon with the Vi variant, and that's actually what we ended up playing in game 2 of this Gauntlet run. So I'm gonna go through this list. As always, deck code and so forth will be in the video description, but we hop in here. This should look really familiar because I've done a video on this in the past, but it's a heavy kind of like mid-range Targon list, but I like to use Piltover and Zaun because I think Mystic Shot gives you a lot of flexibility against Twisted Fate lists. I think Iterative Improvement gives you a lot of flexibility in this list in general on copying your own things, whether it's making more of your own units that invoke things, making more units from your invoked results. So what I mean by that is, you know, if you make an Immortal Fire and for whatever reason they go to obliterate it, you can make a copy again with Iterative Improvement. You can do those things. In certain matchups, it can save you. For example, Fiora Shen, if for whatever reason you end up in that matchup, it's not an ideal matchup for this list. It's one of the ones you're kind of trying to dodge, but if you do end up in it, you can even use this to copy something like Bright Steel Formation, and then that can even the odds or sometimes even give you a blowout. So I just really like having access to this, access to Mystic Shot. Also, again, one of the things you can sometimes struggle with in this list is dealing with elusives, and having your own copies of Iterative means that when your opponent is going off with burbles, you can just copy their burbles the same way they are. And so you kind of keep up in the arms race. And then you don't have access in this version to Boxtopus, right? Because we're not going the Twisted Fate Aphelios route, but we still have Vi, and Vi is like a Boxtopus on steroids. She also will almost assuredly end up being the one that you start piling the buffs from Temple on. So she becomes a win con, and even more so because you have Aphelios who can use Infernum to give her Overwhelm. She can run things over. So I just really like this version. Ballistic Bot is kind of in here for early presence. It's also a great way to buff itself up pretty large. So we talk about Vi and Overwhelm. This can sometimes get it done as well because you're invoking a bunch of stuff that naturally is going to trigger his augment as well. But it's also in here because the Ignition is a great cheap potential trigger for your temples later on. And so I just really like this version of the list. I think that it's very versatile. You're trying to target with this other Twisted Fate lineups. This is pretty decent against TF Fizz. If for whatever reason you are, for example, banning Fiora Shen, you can play this into TF Fizz. This is also good against the, what I call the mirror. But when I say that, I mean Aphelios Twisted Fate, and then you're on your Vi version. I really like this in that matchup. Now, like any mirror, it's draw dependent. If you get the wrong stuff at the wrong time, you can still lose. But so far in my testing, this list has been really good against TF variants. And so, again, we'll go through the full list real quick. Duskbringer, you want to play this on 1, pass on 2 to try to set up Aphelios if you have it. Otherwise, just a source of cheap plays to trigger your temple. Ballistic Bot kind of already covered. Guiding Touch is here to help you in the aggro matchup and cycle. Similarly, we've got Star Shaping to help you with the aggro matchup, and then also Aphelios has access to Severum. So this, along with the Fiora Shen one that we covered yesterday, are what you use. If they ban one, you use the other if you're expecting your opponent to play aggro. Iterative Improvement kind of already covered. Mystic Shot, again, the other nice thing about Mystic Shot is that Targon usually doesn't have access to a lot of hard removal or even damage-based removal, and so Mystic Shot can throw people a bit off. Again, you want to try to kill Twisted Fate, but in the mirror, it's really good against an Aphelios as well. There's just a lot of things Mystic Shot targets right now, so having access to it is great, and in a pinch, you can burn a Nexus. Hail Cascade, pretty straightforward. You're playing Targon, you usually want to play this card. Aphelios is kind of the core engine of the deck. Aphelios and Temple are where you just generate all your value and you try to win a war of attrition. You just have inevitability when you can get them up and running. 2 copies of Hush. If there was a single card I wish I could jam 3 of in somehow, it would probably be this. I've thought about cutting Priestess down to 2 for a 3rd Hush, but for this run, still on 2. 3 copies of Priestess to give you something to play if you don't find your Aphelios. Also gives you access to some of your removal options in Targon. So while Targon doesn't have great removal options natively, you can get things like Meteor, Comet, etc. from this. Bastion to protect your stuff. This is really good on Vi. Her biggest weakness is Hush until you level her. So a lot of times if you can get a Bastion on Vi so that she levels, then you're protected from Hush later. Yes, the Hush will shut off her trigger, but it will allow her to keep that 10 attack power, and that's really important. So Bastion's here to protect your units. Fangs, more anti-aggro, more invoke, just a great card. Temple is bonkers. You abuse mana, you buff things, you know the drill. Covered star shaping a bit, and then Vi helps you control the board. So this is the list. As I said before, we're going to go play a game with this now from my Gauntlet run. As I said in yesterday's video, I've already filmed all of these, so I know how it ends, but you're going to have to watch all of the videos from this run this week if you want to see how it turns out. And let's jump into that game. Let's hop into game 2. See if we can rack up some wins before we take the inevitable loss. I don't think I've ever done one of these along the way where I didn't have at least one loss, even when I hit the prime glories. So this one is a bit interesting because there are a couple of potential ban targets. I still think in this instance we're going to get rid of the Targon list, but this is a strong contender because this can come out of the gates very strong, and this is going to be very good against TF Fizz, assuming that they rock all of the tools that I expect them to. But they didn't let me have Twisted Fate Fizz, and so now we have to make the decision about, do we think that Fiora Shen is better here, or do we want to go with our own value engine? And I think we're going to go with the value engine Targon list here. I think Fiora Shen is a better list. I want to be upfront about that. That's probably the correct pick here, but you know, I want the opportunity from time to time to play my spice. And the last Gauntlet I played, this was the deck that basically got me there. So we want to continue showing it some love. I fully expected LeBlanc Sivir to be the play, and so that's why I kind of wanted to go value oriented. Our biggest issue is that they have access to the spell shields, so it's going to make things like Hush a little less valuable. Fiora Shen is good in this matchup because of their barriers, so that you can block some of those options. This is a bit rough. So we have to decide, do we want to take 5 so that we can make sure we trigger this Nightfall? Or do we do this defensively? I mean, you usually want to save this for LeBlanc is the biggest issue. Our hand is actually quite a bit clunky. I think we end up just taking the 5 here, even though I'm not happy about it. Yeah, this did not get very much better. As weird as it sounds, the correct play might actually be to play Aphelios without Nightfall here and still save the Mystic Shot for a LeBlanc, or we can use it defensively as well. And so I think that's what we're gonna do. We know that we're eating the Roiling Sands. The reality is if we win this game, it's likely going to be on the back of something like Temple into Fangs, start stacking those. Picking up an improvement long term is nice because we can copy Fangs again, but we have to stave off this onslaught at the moment. And as much as we'd like to get Temple going, I think right now this Fangs might have to be the way that we go.
It's my time.
So we will go this route. We ended up with Infernum as our randomly generated option. Again, I wanted to copy these Fangs, but we really need to stave things off. So we still lose the Aphelios, but we made them burn a card.
Blessings of the moon.
Oh, what a shame. I was just about to talk about how we're in a good position to stabilize because they are getting low on resources, but alas, it's not to be.
The soul wears away like grains of sand.
So we're actually going to iterative this. So that we can clean some of this up. It's just a question of whether I want to copy yet another one of these, or do I want to copy one of their own units here. I think we want to copy one of these before we lock this in. We just want to make sure we have good ways to control the board, and this is also a nice cheap activator for our tempo so that we can continue exploiting that, because they basically just refilled their hand, unfortunately for us. And we got our final iterative here. So we take the iterative because we'd like to copy this, but it also triggers our temple so that we can do this. And I think we want to Mystic Shot here. We end up at 7. We're gonna go down to 4, which is dangerous because they could be running something like a Decimate in a list like this. There's not a lot we can do about that, so I think we just let this go. Bank the spell mana and move on. I mean, we could have Bastioned to make sure that we take care of that.
Chase what you want without mercy.
So they're back to refilling their hand.
Humanity is obsolete.
I hate having to put my face on.
We want to do this while they're kind of low on mana. We've seen 2 shaped stones already. Now the question is, do we want to pop this Infernum and start counter pressuring, because that would mean that this would have enough health to survive this exchange? Or do we bank the spell mana knowing that we're going to have to use a star shaping? Could also just attack. I think we're gonna end So by ending, it gives us at least an opportunity to play spells, allowing this to hit 7 health and block this one. Our biggest issue right now is they just have a fistful of cards, but
Sand and trouble far as the eye can see.
so they do that.
Here comes the punchline.
We develop a Vi whose current sole purpose is soaking. They draw more cards. Every time I think we're about to run them out of cards. They go and make a liar out of me. Alright, so they go quick attack there. But again, our temple just needs one more spell. So we're gonna go ahead and buffer our Nexus. Make sure that this goes up by 1. Legitimately a tough call. Supernova's solid here, but because these both have spell shield, not great, though we're hoping to block and kill the 2 of these. Scourge with the Challenger allows us to start pressuring the board. Great Beyond is just always good. I think we're going to take the Great Beyond here because we also don't have a lot we can play this next round. And we do it this way. We're going down to 6 and still trading. Again, they have 1 mana left, but we've already seen 2 shaped stones, but they are also like halfway through their deck. So it's entirely possible they find 1 more. And they've got it. Wow, so that's all 3 shaped stones. All 3 shaped stones. We're just gonna go ahead and pass here, I think. We're gonna have to use Vi to crash into this next round. And we'd love to be able to start getting the bonuses on this. Great Beyond would be nice here, but we really need the health from Fangs. We also would just like to find something useful. Oh my lord. Kind of glad we grabbed that Fangs now. Guess we'll grab this. We haven't seen any Sivers yet either, so I assume that's going to come down and ruin our day at some point here. Now we can actually use a Bastion to save our Vi, potentially. And I think that's actually a requirement at this point. The one potential drawback from this play is if they've got like a bloody business, because we would have wanted to save the Fangs.
Scared? I don't blame you.
We're just trying to stay alive. Turns out Ruin Runner's a really good card, gang. And if you draw all 3 of them, you have a strong chance of winning. That's a LeBlanc. Saboteur. Okay. Are they finally gonna run out of cards? Maybe. Because again, this is one of those games where we should have been able to out-resource them, but they just hit all of the draw. This is actually a really good pickup for us, though. because this was not helping us much
This'll shake 'em.
at the moment.
Smoke and mirrors. Ooh.
So the interesting predicament that we have at the moment is that we want to gain the health from this, but we could theoretically, assuming they don't have another buff, we could keep our Vi alive and level her up here potentially if we use star shaping on the Vi, which is the same as healing us for 5 anyway, because we're stopping the overwhelm. I think here we just take the living legends.
Challenge to the fists.
We're fine with that. I mean, they stopped the healing, but if they would have done it here, I guess they don't have a second spell, really. If they had a second spell and done it there, we were dead, but the spell shield from the Bastion kind of keeps us alive there. They deny the heal, but at least we still have the fangs for now. We just need a really good result off of this living legends this next round.
I can write it.
Although Great Beyond, I mean, this is going to refill our mana, so it kind of doesn't matter, but Great Beyond might be enough to just get it done anyway. What are we worried about at the moment? Like a rally effect or something? We could also still Daybreak with enough mana for Living Legends to reset us, and then we can go from there. Let's do that. We'll have this as backup for later, more lifesteal. It also means that this is the thing that gets the vulnerable. So here's their Sivir. They finally found their Sivir.
You've got a problem, I've got a price.
So we have a snack, and we can save that Great Beyond and go with this one. Just hope that the elusive, and that's a win. So starting the Gauntlet run 2-0. That was a bit dicey, but we pulled it out despite all of their card draw, and that's the power of Targon.